There's a classroom no bigger than a sunflower field, tucked behind willow trees that bend like grandmothers and breathe with rain. Morning fog gathers at its windows like sleepy thoughts, and the chimney smells faintly of melted crayon and old lunchboxes dot inside. It's always warm, not just from radiators, but paper warmth, the kind that lives in finger paint and glitter glue and coats of kindness looped onto little cubbies. Stars dangle from yarn above the reading rug, and a mural of painted handprints fans across one wall like the wings of something softly waiting. But beneath it all, beneath the splashy noise of the fish tank filter and the rustle of storybooks and the squeaky chairs during circle time, beneath the clatter and laughter and sharing lesson mats, there was a quiet dot. It lived under the art table, between the bins of googly eyes and pipe cleaners, where very few children thought to look. It was a hush, a stillness, not from forgetting, a different kind. The kind of quiet you might find in a museum after everyone's gone home, or in a forest where the trees are listening. Late one afternoon, between apple slices and cleanup, songs, a girl named Jovi dropped her yellow crayon. It rolled under the art table and bumped against something that gave a tiny, plush-sounding rustle. Something warm, something alive. She leaned down, bangs falling like curtains, and peered into the shadow. A pause, then Jovi stood slowly. She didn't say anything, not right away. She simply returned to her seat, her yellow crayon clutched just shy of her palm. Her mouth opened like she'd forgotten to close it. And though Ms. Reed later asked if anything was wrong, Jovi just blinked, and asked quietly if guinea pigs have dreams. Because what Jovi had seen what only the soft, brave, and the quietly curious might have seen was a look. A very small look, from very round eyes. Eyes set deep in fur, the color of sunless parchment, crinkled and soft. The color you might picture if you heard the word quiet spoken aloud. It blinked at her, the guinea pig, from beneath a tunnel of fleece no taller than a math workbook. It didn't scurry, didn't squeak, just blinked, then returned to chewing something green and stringy with the slow patience of someone who already knew the ending of the story. No one called attention to it that day, nor the next. Most children didn't even notice the small cage near the window, tucked neatly behind the easel display. Too many things competed for louder eyes. Clay volcanoes, wind-up robots, a boy who only wore capes. But slowly, the noticing began. Robin, the swiftest drawer in the class, set down her glitter pen and commented, "He's always looking at Liam." No one replied. Nicolette, who once screamed at worms, whispered "bless you" when the guinea pig sneezed. No one said why, and Ms. Reed, worn and kind and forever untangling lunch, firmer eyes began checking Crumpet's cage every day before attendance. She'd never named him aloud, but every child somehow knew Crumpet, like the snack, sweet and warm and slightly wrinkled. He appeared the same each morning, quiet, watching, ears twitching like he was trying to overhear. Something already gone, and so it went. A tiny presence in the classroom, invisible to strangers, noticed only by the soft-footed and the melancholy, by those who paused between moments, who lingered one breath longer at the nap mats, who touched the leaves on the window drawn in sticker gel and felt, somehow, that one of them was real. Children began to speak more gently when they passed Crumpet's corner, without being asked. Parents arrived at pickup confused why their child tucked lettuce into their coat pocket and whispered, "It's for him." The janitor once dropped his broom near the art table and looked over sharply, expecting squeaks. A dash, some frightened scurrying, but Crumpet only stared up at him, blinking slow. The janitor never used that broom near room 12 again. Something small had come. Not loud, not magic, as most would understand it. But curious things began to happen. A fight over toy trucks resolved before it began. One child swerved without knowing why. Lost mittens returned unasked for, folded beside the doormat. A broken crayon found by the very student who'd been searching for it, exactly when they'd stopped hoping. The guinea pig didn't chatter, didn't perform, but for some reason, in a room of chaos-colored blocks and loud apologies, Crumpet always seemed to know who needed something. He never moved much, rarely left his tunnel, but his presence sound the way he watched felt like folded hands, or a warm cup left waiting at your seat. It would take weeks before any adult thought to ask where he came from, and even when they did, Ms. Reed would only smile softly, touch the soft fur tucked beneath her desk, and say, "He came on a Tuesday, I think," which was both true and not the whole story. But that comes later. For now, just know this: a hush lives under the art table in room 12, and if your heart is small enough not in size, but in noise, you might hear him. The whisper of whiskers, the slow inhale of paper shavings, a breath that better rooms have built themselves around. Because Crumpet, rescue of no particular breed and champion of forgotten corners, had stories of his own, and he was just beginning. It started on a rainy Tuesday in the middle of March. The rain wasn't angry. It was the kind that sounded like someone humming through their teeth. It made car windows blurry and made the world look like it had just woken from a long dream. Ms. Reed had planned only one errand that day after school: the pet store on Ashwood Lane. Room 12's old class fish had floated silently one by one the week before, and the silence of the tank had somehow thrown off the entire room. So, she thought fish. Peaceful, forgettable fish with small lives and glassy stares. Easy to clean. No fur involved. The shop smelled like cedar bedding and wet alfalfa pellets. Bells jingled as she entered, and the store owner, a man with silver sideburns and a name, Tagvatcher, said Ronnie, looked up from the back. "Class pet?" he asked without her saying a word. She smiled faintly. "Fish this time, something low mate." Ronnie hummed, non-committal, and gestured toward the tanks along the wall. Neon tetras glided beneath bright pebbles. Molly fish blinked up like tiny lost ghosts. She stared through glass for minutes longer than she meant to. Maybe longer than she wanted. That's when he said it. "There's a shelter drop-off in the back. He's got 2 days left." Her brow furrowed. Her hand still paused on the tank filter. "A what?" Ronnie scratched behind his ear, almost sheepish, not fancy. "A guinea pig. Someone gave up on him. Nothing wrong, just quiet. Been watching him a lot." Thought maybe he cut his thought short with a shrug. Ms. Reed opened her mouth. No words arrived. She had rules, always had things to structure the chaos of 20 small lives in one room. No mammals, no fur, and certainly nothing that could chew through a glue stick. But something about Ronnie's tone, the pause in it, stirred a hallway. In her chest that hadn't opened in years, he came out with a shoebox. It wasn't even taped. Inside was a balled-up sock, a few tufts of orchard hay, and nestled within, fur, quiet, unkempt fur, the color of soft dust and tea leaves, ears folded like tiny origami shells. He didn't dart, didn't squeal, just sat. "I'll pay for his supplies," Ronnie said. "If it's for your classroom." She didn't answer. Instead, Ms. Reed crouched, reaching her hands carefully, palms up toward the box. The guinea pig didn't lift a paw, just looked at her. It was the looking that stayed with her. Not scared, not hopeful, just listening. And when her fingers gently curled upward, cradling his body, he let her. No kicks, no protests. Dented wear. She held him like small things, dew-and warm like nothing she'd remembered holding in years. There was silence between them, and sometimes silence is its own kind of yes. She nodded once. The ride back to her apartment was oddly ceremonial. She buckled the shoebox in next to her, glancing at every stop sign as if daring the world to misstep. At home, she placed him on a folded wool scarf, the one she only wore on snow days, and watched him sniff with considered slowness. He tucked himself into a neat curl despite the new smells, the soft clatter of keys, the rumble of a dishwasher and a leaky tap. And all through that night, she kept peeking in, just to see. He didn't even flinch when her shadow passed the doorway. The next morning, she carried him beneath her coat, nestled in a repurposed lunch tote, cushioned by an old fleece hoodie she hadn't wanted to throw out, but had never worn. He was still, too still, she thought. Had she made a mistake? Room 12 bustled like always. Backpacks thudded, zippers jammed. Someone shouted about banana peels and how dinosaur stickers weren't for sharing. Ms. Reed placed the small carrier on her desk and unzipped the edge, just enough to get a glimpse. One round I stared out, unblinking. He hasn't moved, she whispered, unsure whether she was speaking to herself or the guinea pig. By snack time, he'd tucked himself into the hoodie's armhole and hadn't emerged. She didn't tell the class. Maybe she shouldn't have brought him, she thought. They didn't need a fragile presence, and she will. She didn't need something else to worry about breaking. But then the last bell rang, and the quiet began. Again, Ms. Reed stayed late after pick-up, as she sometimes did, sorting scissors by color, straightening nap mats, pacing and unpacing. She'd nearly forgotten about the box on her desk, until something made her stop in the slanted gold of the setting sun. She noticed the hoodie sleeve had shifted, not far no more than a whisper's worth, but it had moved. From within, a peculiar crunching echoed faintly. She leaned in. Lettuce, the guinea pig munched confidently, as if she'd never existed, as if the day had been perfectly fine from beginning to end. Ms. Reed laughed. Once, a real one, not shy, she murmured. By habit, her hand reached for a pen. She tore the corner from a stack of old construction paper, wrote one word without thinking. Crumpet. She folded the paper into a lopsided name tag and taped it gently to the edge of the carrier. It looked official, final, not up for discussion that night. Every cabinet in her small kitchen opened too loudly. Her tea steeped too long, and she noticed for the first time in what felt like forever how much silence her home actually held. She almost took Crumpet back out of the classroom, tote almost. Instead, she dug out a small hand mirror, slipped it into the edge of the softened box, and left the lid unzipped just a little, so he could see the world if he wanted, just in case he wanted. In the stillness, she whispered, "They'll like you." Then, quieter still, as if to herself, "They need something soft this year." The next morning, rain again, and it suited her. It made everything a murmur, and room 12 liked murmurs. She moved the art easel slightly, tucked Crumpet's new cage near the windows where the sun smudged itself in long streaks across the tile. She lined it with fleece scraps cut from an old scarf, placed the food dish just so, whispered good luck in a way she hoped no one saw. By the time the first child entered, puddle-footed and coat-shedding, Crumpet had already flattened himself into a quiet loaf beneath the tunnel. The room never noticed a change. Not yet. The fish would wait, Ms. Reed had brought home something else, and her rules. Well, rules were made in the absence of miracles. The first day, no one noticed him. Morning rustles filled the room, backpacks flung open like treasure chests, voices bouncing off cubby walls, and the chaos of 20 small humans reuniting with their glitter-filled kingdom. Jovi lost a shoelace. Nicolette insisted it was her day to feed the fish even, though the tank sat empty, and Zach, who wore superhero capes on Mondays, swirled into his corner, shouting, "Emergency rescue." The tiny cage near the easel display didn't move. Not even a blink of Whiskers dot from within the fleece tunnel. Crumpet watched, silent, small, still surprisingly wrinkled. Lettuce remained untouched in his food bowl. The water bottle glistened with one untouched drop. Ms. Reed glanced at him once around snack time, brow pinched. She thought she'd seen him shift, a twitch perhaps, but it may have just been the sun glancing off the cage bars. Circle time, when the chatter dimmed just enough. A child sneezed. Someone giggled. Crumpet did not. Not a single child mentioned him that first day. He was just another quiet thing in a classroom full of loud ones. Asterisk on the third day, someone found a pencil. It had rolled deep beneath the shelving unit, and no one had seen it since the week before. Bennett, who'd been reduced to borrowing nubs for 3 days, declared it a miracle. "It's the same one," he said triumphantly, holding it aloft. "I recognized the nibble mark." Ms. Reed squinted. "You sure it didn't just fall out of your own backpack?" But Bennett only grinned, spinning it between his fingers. "Nope. It found me again." Crumpet, from beneath his tunnel, blinked. Munching resumed. Ms. Reed paused with the attendant's clipboard in her hand. A quiet breeze passed between her and the cage, less a draft, more a whisper. A thought she couldn't quite catch. She murmured, and checked off one more. Name. Asterisk. By the end of the first week, Nicolette approached the cage, not loudly, not with the dramatic flair that usually accompanied her declarations about slime or her deep distrust of ants. Just a quiet moment during free play, with one crayon-streaked sock half unstuffed from her sneaker, and a whisper to her classmate Delilah, "I think the new pet has kind eyes." Delilah, sculpting a jellyfish from purple pipe cleaners, barely looked up. "You mean the hamster?" "He's not a hamster," Nicolette corrected. Delilah didn't argue. From his tunnel, Crumpet made no movement, but his eye turned slightly toward them. Liam was the first to sit near the cage. Not directly, not with purpose. He didn't walk up and declare anything. He simply chose the beanbag closest to the easel. He didn't color, didn't build blocks. Just sat. Ms. Red noticed. She was wiping finger paint from a table when she turned around and paused mid-swipe. Liam, the boy who hadn't spoken once this year, not one word, sat with his chin on his knees, watching the fleece tunnel like it might open into something else. Crumpet didn't come out, but a single strand of hay was pulled just visibly into the tunnel's opening. Liam watched and didn't move. By Tuesday of the second week, it changed. Not suddenly, but subtly. Less like a switch flipped, more like light shifting inside a puddle. Bennett dropped his snack grapes across the floor like tiny comet sand when Ava shouted, "Ooh." She stopped herself mid-wince, looked toward the cage, then quietly fetched a napkin and helped pick them up. Jovi, tripping over her. Untied shoes again, didn't cry. She sat down and retied them, tongue poking from the side of her mouth, barely glancing at her scraped elbow. Robin, who normally ignored nap time in favor of humming beneath a blanket, tucked herself in and whispered, "Crumpet's sleeping, I don't want to wake him." Ms. Reed, adjusting the reading corner rug, blinked slowly at that. She hadn't asked them to be quiet. In fact, she hadn't mentioned Crumpet all morning. He hadn't made a sound, and yet the hum of the room had shifted. Like all the chairs, had been moved one quiet inch closer to the ground. A week later, a box of markers was returned without its capless soldiers. They clicked together as Ms. Reed opened it, fully every color accounted for. She stared down at the box for a long time, eyebrows drawn. No one had assigned cleanup chores that morning. Behind her, the children sat building cardboard robots and gluing googly eyes to leaves. Crumpet remained in his tunnel. The water bottle was half empty. "Thank you, Ms." Reed whispered absently, unsure who she was thanking. No one replied. Parents began to ask, not with suspicion, more with curiosity. Soft confusion threaded through pickup lines and jacket-zipping chatter. Liam said, "There's a marshmallow pet." One mum said, "Olive tucked lettuce into her doll stroller." Another chuckled, "Wouldn't say why." One father leaned in toward Ms. Reed, eyes searching. "You using music therapy now?" he asked. "Because my son, he's been calmer." She smiled. "Just the regular schedule." He nodded, unconvinced. Back inside the classroom, Crumpet lay half-curled by the edge of his fleece tunnel, eyes open, listening. One morning, Ms. Reed arrived earlier than she meant. Maybe the building still smelled like waxed tile and early fog. Room 12 stirred only slightly in the breeze of the cracked window. She unlocked the door, set her things down, moved toward the cage on instinct. He was already waiting, sitting near the bars. Fur slightly ruffled, Crumpet blinked up at her with the deliberate quiet of someone who didn't need to speak first. "You're very awake," she said softly. She refilled his hay, arranged a baby carrots beside the chew toy. She didn't plan to sit next to the cage, didn't plan to stay, but she did both, and when the custodian passed by and saw her, their legs folded like a child, whispering something into a cage. Old man only nodded once and kept walking. The stickers came next. 3 children, independently, began drawing small signs and taping them up around the cage. Not loud ones. Not "do not touch" or "class pet" or "Crumpet's home." One read, "He likes warm noises." Another, "He's very good at blinking." And the last, drawn by Liam, had just 2 words and a soft, looping heart. "Still here." It began with the sound of a sneeze, a faint little chew, from the corner of the room beneath the art table, near the bin of pom-poms and the half-built castle of paper towel rolls. It was a Monday, not the sleepy kind or the stormy kind. Just a pale blue, middle of everything, Monday with apples at snack time and Once Upon a Time hanging in the air. Ms. Reed was at the computer, typing up report notes. Small fingers tapped blocks together on the rug. Jovi sang the wrong lyrics to the cleanup song, and Crumpet, nestled as always in the patchwork fleece tunnel beside his food dish, made that single sneeze. It should have been nothing, but Ms. Reed's head turned slowly. She blinked at the cage, then at Olivia, who sat nearby with a red nose and a waxy box of tissues clutched to her chest. "Feeling all right, Liv?" The girl shrugged. wiping her nose. "Kinda hot," she admitted. Ms. Reed moved to the cubbies and gently placed a hand on Olivia's forehead. She was warm, warmer than snack time warm. Not feverish, but uncertain. "I think we'll send you home early today, love." At the nurse's office, an hour later, Olivia dozed while waiting for her mother, a soft shiver in her arms. And just as her mother signed her out, they called an ambulance for another child from a different class, with nearly the same symptoms, but more advanced. Olivia's mother paled. She thanked Ms. Red again and again. "You noticed so fast," she said. Ms. Red smiled, but her mind flicked back to the sneeze. Not Olivia single quotes, as the sneeze that didn't quite belong to blankets or hay. Allergies, not alone, not like that. The next Monday, he sneezed again, and once again, someone left the room, early Tanner. This time, grumpy, flushed, full of half-headed scribbles and barely touched crackers. Ms. Reed raised her eyebrows. 2 coincidences in a row weren't exactly scientific. But teaching wasn't science, always. It was rhythm. Echoes. She'd learned to listen not just to sounds, but to the quiet that changed before them. The way glue sticks slowed down on whispery days. The way tantrums stretched in a certain direction. Depending on moon cycles, she watched Crumpet through the end of the day. That evening, she made tea, left glittery scraps out to air dry, read 3 pages of a sleepy novel from the armchair near her window, and still saw round eyes blinking behind memory. Tuesday. Nothing. Crumpet munched like usual, lazily blinking and nibbling the edges of a cardboard roll. Wednesday. Same, and yet, when Friday morning arrived, with backpacks slung low and rain caught in all the hallways, Crumpet squeaked. Not high or frightened, not a whimper, a bark, almost sharp, short. Once Ms. Reed turned, startled. So did Jovi, who was mid-turn on the balance board. So did Nicolette. The sound settled quickly, but Ms. Reed moved through the room, collecting murmurs in her mind like puzzle pieces. By snack time, Ava had slumped near the reading corner, paler, breathing slower. Ms. Reed moved gently to her side. "Come, sit with me for a bit," she whispered. Later, Ava's mother would say they caught the flu just in time. 2 days earlier could have meant the ER, they'd said. Ms. Reed placed a pale green sticky note on the corner of Crumpet's cage that afternoon. Just 3 words. Monday equals pay attention. From that day forward, the class shifted. Not dramatically, just slightly. Ms. Red watched with a kind of reverent curiosity, ever assuming. Just noting if Crumpet squeaked loud on a Monday. She checked temperatures twice. If he flattened his ears between 9 a.m. and lunch, she double-checked the hand sanitizer levels. If he didn't stir when a child sat nearby, she watched the child more closely than usual. One Monday, Crumpet stood fully upright in his tunnel, ears alert, eyes still, not eating, not sleeping. Ms. Reed called a parent before lunch. A doctor's visit later that day confirmed an early ear infection, caught up tight. Before fevers, before tears. "You must be part angel," the parent had said. Ms. Reed dipped her head. "Nope, just observant," she replied. All the while, Crumpet resumed chewing hay like nothing had happened. By the 3rd month, Mondays had become something of a ritual. Each morning, a few children would pass Crumpet's cage and say, "Good Monday," or "What do you think, boy?" One even wrote a poem called Monday Whispers, and hey. If Crumpet's ears flicked twice when Robin asked if the adventure book could wait another day, The class quietly shifted to coloring dot those days. The class held its breath a bit, then moved forward as if it had made a pact with something gentle and wise. It never felt eerie, never felt heavy, just guided. A hush with a heartbeat inside the shoebox kingdom. Crumpet continued, neither loud nor demanding, but all around him and papers, stickers, songs. His name appeared more often, drawn onto door signs shaped like stars, spoken like a tiny spell between scraped knees and rain boots. Ms. Reed had a notebook at the top of the page. She wrote Monday timing crumpet notes below it, sketches of ears, weather reports, names in columns. She never turned it into a study, never tried to prove it, but she watched every Monday. She watched Anne Crumpet, old soul wrapped in whisper, seemed fine with that, seemed to be doing the watching too. It was the kind of afternoon that smelled like watercolor paper and peeled oranges. Sunlight fanned through the blinds and stripes, curling warm across the rug where Liam sat, exactly where he always sat, just to the left of the reading corner, beneath the hanging paper planets that never spun quite the same way twice. No one asked why Liam always chose that spot. He didn't speak, hadn't since September, not a single word. Not when Ms. Reed said good morning, or when someone offered him a puzzle piece, or even when he tripped. He'd simply nod or blink or sit still until the moment passed like a cloud shadow, but he always sat near Crumpet. Crumpet, nestled in his usual fleece tunnel, looked at Liam the way some old trees seem to look at hikers, calm, unmoved, somehow entirely present. Other children floated in and out of the scene. Robin tying marker caps together like a chain, Nicolette humming something off-key, and someone, probably Bennett, trying to teach a bucket of buttons how to count. On Liam's lap, a drawing. It was his second that month, maybe third all year. A soft pencil sketch, warbling lines and ghost-shaded cheeks. The figure was a man sitting on a park bench, a little crooked and proud-eyed, grey hair, lopsided smile, the word grappa printed carefully beneath it. Ms. Reed watched from her desk, her heart folding in a quiet, private way. Liam had drawn him before, in clouds, in a rocking chair, once holding a fishing rod bent too severely to ever land a real fish. She knew the man must have mattered very much, but this drawing felt gentler, less remembered, more relived, until the wind came. One wide gust, sudden and sharp as a gasp, swept through the cracked window and slashed across the art table. Paint cups wobbled. A mobile of tissue birds swung wildly, one wing detaching and flying like a cry, and then splash, a cup tipped. Water blue with paint and the scent of tempera faintly sour rushed across the table, down a paper hill, and landed in a warbly splash across Liam's lap. Across the drawing, the page sopped instantly. Blues bled into greys, pencil lines cried. Into each other, the bench turned puddle. Grappa inked itself into a blur. Paper sagged. Liam didn't cry, didn't yell or tear or throw or call for anyone. He simply froze. His hands, still cupping what remained of the portrait, trembled but only just. A hush bloomed in the room. Ms. Reed rose from her chair, unsure whether to bring a towel or a hug. But before she could reach him, there was a sound. Not loud, not human. A chirp, tiny, almost apologetic, like the sound a shoelace might make if it apologized for coming undone. Crumpet. From his tunnel he emerged, not with a dash or scramble, but with great deliberateness, each step like punctuation. He sniffed the air once, twice. Dot walked toward the bars where Liam sat frozen. Then, with a gentle nudge of his nose, he pulled a single soggy corner of the drawing through the bars. Not far, just a tug. Then another, carefully, with the odd grace only tiny feet and deep intent can offer. Liam watched, unblinking. Crumpet dragged another edge, then nudged the middle, coaxing it slightly straighter. He didn't chew, didn't clamber or squeak again. Just tended. As though the paper mattered. As though remembering someone you love could never be ruined completely. Not even by water. Liam blinked once. Then again, his fingers curled away from the wet paper, still silent, but his head tilted forward. Resting briefly against the cage bar, Crumpet gently pressed his forehead there, to Dot, and that's when Liam said it, not loud, not forced. His mouth barely moved, but everyone close enough heard it. He saved it. 3 words, dropping like quiet marbles into the wide, held breath of the classroom, and every head turned. Ms. read, halfway to the sink with a wad of paper towels. Stopped mid-dash stride. Robin dropped a marker cap. Jovi gasped so sharply her hair clip fell out. Liam didn't repeat it, didn't look up until Crumpet, slowly, returned to his fleece tunnel and disappeared. Still, the paper remained warped, tired but intact. A sketch of love remembered. He saved it, Liam repeated, just under his breath, for the rest of that week. Crumpet's food bowl held 2 extra lettuce leaves each afternoon. Drawings of Guinea. Pigs bloomed across tabletops and window corners, and Liam spoke. Not often, not about much. But when Ms. Reed asked at circle time what things made us feel better when sad, Liam said, soft but certain, something warm that listens. And everyone understood exactly who he meant. The sky bruised early, folding into itself with deep plums and dusty greys. Outside room 12, the wind bent low, threading between playground swings and rattling the chain-link fence. One by one, parent pickups stretched later and later. Ms. Reed glanced at the clock, then toward the door again. Looks like there's a storm rolling in, she said gently, trying to flatten the worry folded into her voice. Inside, the fish tank hummed its patient burble. The overhead lights flickered once, then stayed steady. Still, something in the room held its breath. Crumpet lay curled in his fleece tunnel, unmoved, measuring the air in slow, whiskered intervals. A single tuft of bedding clung to his ear. Forgotten Dot. Robin fingered the edge of her jacket zipper, eyes darting from window to door. My mum works downtown, she mumbled, more to herself than anyone else. Ms. Red crouched next to her. She come, just a little late, maybe. Outside, thunder cracked like a drawer slammed shut. Bennett shrieked not at the sound, but because his juice box sprayed across his sleeve. Nicolette covered her ears. Liam, silent, only shifted slightly closer to Crumpet's cage. We'll have an indoor picnic, Ms. Reed said, trying for brightness that landed just shy of real. Who wants alphabet crackers? A few children nodded, scattered replies, barely above whispers. Some gathered their crayons, like they'd forgotten how to color. The mood unraveled slowly, like a sweater snagged on a nail. The lights flicked again, then dark. It was a soft blackout, not violent, just sudden. The hum of the air vents stopped. Even the aquarium noise died. Silence draped the room like a heavy quilt. Someone sniffled. Hey now, Miss Reed said quietly, fumbling for her phone flashlight. Its small beam cast a hazy circle on the rug. Storms come and go. Let's make it an adventure. The room, unsure of how to believe her, held still until Crumpet moved. Every child noticed at once. He stepped out from his tunnel knot, rushed, not fearful. The soft pat of his feet sounded like fingers brushing velvet. He sat plainly in the glow of the dim light, unbothered, steady, eyes open and calm as rooftops. Robin whispered, "He's not scared." Ms. Reed nodded, lowering herself cross-legged beside the cage. "He's teaching us not to be." The children followed. One by one, they gathered near the reading rug, some clutching blankets from the cubbies, others holding crayon boxes like talismans. Jovi made room for Nicolette, who had her knees pulled to her chest. "Story?" Bennett asked, forehead tipped. Toward Ms. Reed's shoulder. Ms. Reed reached for a picture book. Of course, they huddled close. The children leaned together, a shaky constellation of drowsy bodies and flickering hopes. She began to read, her voice low and clear, like river stones skipping across quiet current as she spoke. Crumpet shifted his weight and tucked one paw beneath him. His gaze didn't break, locked on the group like he was reading to Dot. Each word, Ms. Reed, softened the room. The shadows seemed less sharp, the windows less vast and rattling. Somewhere in the narrative, a few children nodded off without meaning to, others rested on elbows or leaned into one another. Liam remained, sitting straight, hand flat on the floor near Crumpet's cage. "I think he's making the storm smaller," Jovi whispered through a yawn. Ms. Reed paused, brushing hair from her face. "Maybe he is." By the third story, more than half the class was nodding into sleep. Ms. Reed passed out the last of the blankets, gently covering legs and shoulders. One child used a backpack as a pillow, another curled near the book bin. Ms. Reed took the thin throw from her own chair and knelt near the cage. "Room for me," she whispered. Crumpet blinked once. She laid the blanket beside his corner head, resting near the cage's edge. The wood floor was hard, but calming. She hadn't meant to close her eyes, but in the heavy quiet, she let go. Outside, thunder rolled again, gentler now. The room breathed together, soft bellows of tiny sleep and sighs. Somewhere near the far side of the carpet, a child murmured, "In a dream, something about marshmallows." Near morning, just before light climbed back across the blinds, a thin line of gold settled along the wall. Crumpet still sat, eyes open, guarding. On the second day of Art Week, Ms. Reed unrolled thick butcher paper across the center table and laid out the watercolor sets. Jars of cloudy rinse cups clinked gently beside soft-haired brushes. The room smelled like damp paper and lemon cookies, from someone's snack bag left open. "Today," Ms. Reed said, tapping the edge of the table with a ruler, "I want you to paint an animal you know. A pet, a favorite, a memory. Something with heartbeat and whiskers or feathers or fins." A low buzz of excitement rippled through the room. "My dog," shouted Bennett immediately. "I'm doing my grandma's parakeet," said Nicolette, squinting hard at the empty page, as if it would tell her where to start. Robin quickly dipped her brush, before anyone else, sketching fast loops that bloomed into a turtle shell. Liam sat with a fresh sheet, pencil unmoving, eyes flicking left toward the fleece tunnel by the easel. Crumpet was quiet, loafed in his usual crescent way, nose occasionally lifting at the scent of wet paint. Children hunched around the paper, like they were huddling over tiny campfires of memory. Ms. Reed moved among them gently, pausing to refill rinse cups and straighten palettes, and then she came to Olive, a quiet girl by default. Olive didn't giggle loudly or wave for attention. She colored with her left hand even though she wrote with her right. She often hummed with her mouth closed. Ms. Reed stopped behind her and tilted her head slightly. The painting was luminous, not in technique exactly. Olive was 5 after, all but in feeling. A small, golden creature was pressed into the center of a field of flowers and stars. Its paws were tucked under like soft question marks. Its ears curved like a half-heard lullaby. But behind it, faint and shimmering, were wings, faint lines of white inside, soft yellows. The shape glowed with something not quite light, not quite story. Around it, Olive had dotted small stars. Their orbits were wild, playful. There was no name at the bottom. Ms. Reed knelt beside her. "Is this someone you know?" Olive blinked, kind of. Ms. Reed waited. "I didn't mean to paint him," Olive said. Softly, she tapped the brush once on the edge of the palette. "It just came into my head. He gave it to me. He..." Olive looked toward the cage. Crumpet hadn't moved. "But maybe it's not him," Olive added quickly. "Not really. It's like, dream him." Miss Reed didn't say anything right away. She nodded once, very slowly, and touched the edge of the paper. "Would you like to title it?" she asked after a moment. Olive shook her head. "No name. He knows anyway." The painting was more than a painting. The room seemed to feel it too subtle at first, like when a breeze changes direction a second before you notice. Children began peeking over shoulders. A small crowd gathered. "That's Crumpet," Robin whispered. "But floaty." "He's wearing light," Jovi said, eyes wide, like rainbow armor. "Those are stars," Bennett said, pointing at the dots. "He guards things, like space guinea pigs or something." "No," Liam murmured, "just dreams. He lives in the dreams we don't." Remember, Ms. Reed hung the wet painting near the drying rack, but it didn't feel right. Too far, too alone. A few days later, she took it down again and placed it in a small wooden frame, one she usually reserved for photos on the welcome table. She hung the frame beside Crumpet's cage, not low enough to be touched and crumpled, but near enough that his tunnel faced it whenever he poked his head out. And he did. He'd sit there some mornings, nose tipped toward the nameless image, unmoving, as though it told a story he already knew by heart. Visitors eventually began to ask about it. "It's just something a student painted," Ms. Reed would say, voice a shade softer. "We liked it." "Oh, is that a hamster?" "Guinea pig," one child would correct carefully. "Is it Crumpet?" "No one really knows," Ms. Reed would reply. "But he gave it to us, I think." Years rolled on. Classes came and went. Crumpet's tunnel moved eventually. New fleece, new bins beneath the art table, new seating charts. But the painting stayed, always near his corner, always with its stars and nameless golden creature, shimmering wings, like whispers, when children walked past it. Some placed small stickers beneath the frame. Some nodded like it had spoken directly to them. And once, a substitute teacher stared a long while and said quietly, "That's not just a painting." Ms. Reed only smiled. "No," she agreed. "It's something that happens when kids see things adults forget." She never tried to explain it further, and Crumpet, he never gave his opinion. But sometimes, when everything was still and the room was only light and fern shadows and distant hallway footfalls, Ms. Reed swore he looked straight. Through the paper, Freeman smiled. It happened on a Friday, the kind of Friday where attention slid like spilled juice and conversations overlapped like finger paints. The desks were pushed slightly askew. The air smelled faintly of peanut butter crackers and those tiny ginger cookies someone had brought in a paper bag. Show and tell was supposed to start right after the cleanup song, but no one had found the broom and Ms. Reed's voice was hoarse from allergy season. "I'm first," Bennett declared, waving a permission slip above his head like a tiny flag. Ms. Reed, halfway through untangling a puppet's missing eyeball from a piece of yarn, nodded distractedly. "Yes, sweetie. But remember 5 minutes and no surprises, okay?" Bennett beamed the way only confident kindergartners can. "It'll be good. His name's Maximus." Maximus, it turned out, was a Labrador mixed with more tail than sense. He bounded through the door with Bennett's dad trailing behind, leash loose but optimism tighter. Maximus had a smile too wide for the hallway, tongue already dripping, and eyes full of apology and chaos. Children squealed before they even processed the shape of events. The dog bolted forward, paws too big for tile, nails clicking like hasty drum beats. Ms. Reed stood abruptly. "Gentle now," she called, but her voice was no match for the thundering joy of a dog with a captive audience and zero indoor manners. Robin dove behind the beanbags. Nicolette climbed onto a chair. Paper suns flew from the bulletin board as Maximus charged jubilantly into the art corner. Parents always meant well. Bennett clung to the leash, but mostly as decoration. "It's okay," he called. "He's just excited." Indeed, he was. Maximus circled the circle rug twice, barked at the fishless tank, and leaped toward the bin of blocks before freezing mid-air. Everyone saw it, the turn, the lip curl. That low, surprised growl. Maximus had finally seen the cage. Crumpet, silent and watchful beneath his fleece tunnel, had not moved. But Maximus stopped cold. His paws skidded slightly on the polished floor as his ears shot forward and tail flicked. For a moment, it wasn't clear what was about to happen. 100 paths hovered in every held breath. Then Maximus lowered his head softly, like the moment had a volume that needed adjusting, and he'd chosen mute. He sat right then, not begrudgingly, not in fear, as if someone had called him by name in a way bones couldn't rival. Silence roamed the room like a teacher with no lesson plan. Ms. Reed loosened her grip on the edge of Liam's chair. "Well," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "That was very respectful." Bennett stood blinking behind Maximus. "He's never done that before," he muttered. Liam was still, knees to his chest, watching the dog with a curious intensity. Maximus turned his head slightly, just enough to glance through the bars of the cage again, then lay flat on the floor. One paw stretched toward Crumpet's corner, not touching, just close. Crumpet shifted for the first time, barely. A nudge of nose toward the tunnel's edge, to slow blinks, then stillness again. The class exhaled. No screams, no barking, no chaos. Just a dog, too big for beanbags, sitting like a statue of manners at story time, near the quietest animal in the room. For the rest of show and tell, Maximus didn't move. Even when Bennett offered him a treat shaped like a firefighter's badge, Maximus simply blinked and returned his gaze to the fleece tunnel. Jovi leaned toward Ms. Reed. "I think Crumpet did it," she whispered. "Did what?" Ms. Reed asked. "Made him remember something." Later, after the room had righted itself and Maximus had padded out the door with Bennett trailing in stunned silence, the children resumed their afternoon. But something was different. Nicolette, normally allergic to any encounter with dog hair, drew a portrait Maximus sitting calmly beside a golden squiggle labeled Crumpet, wizard of quiet. Robin declared she would only bring a plant for her turn next week. No more barkers, she said sagely. And Liam, he walked to the cage on silent feet, placed a single sticker shaped like a star on the folded edge of Crumpet's food bowl. He didn't say anything, but his smile was wide, like he'd seen two kinds of magic in one afternoon. Crumpet, shoulders rising in a slow stretch, returned to his tunnel and disappeared like a thought well kept. After that, whenever there was an animal visitor, someone would ask first, do they do okay near Crumpet? Because, from that point forward, no dog barked in room 12. No bunny kicked wildly. Even the class gecko, shown off in a shoebox with tulip leaves, stopped frantically scratching when placed near the cage. Crumpet never moved much, never made noise, but around him, even the wild things paused, and beside him, everything softened just enough to listen. It was the sort of Tuesday that passed without asking permission, the kind that arrived too early, wore borrowed light, and forgot to take off its fog. Children stumbled in with bedhead and mittens that didn't match. Nicolette burst into tears over glue sticks. Bennett stuck his sleeve in the oatmeal bin. The cactus on the windowsill tilted just a little farther south. Ms. Red noticed the oddness first, not the flurry of small dramas that was normal, but something else. She moved absently toward Crumpet's corner while passing out the morning worksheets. Pause. Not a rustle, not a blink. The fleece tunnel sat still, untouched, its edge cool when she brushed it with the back of her hand. Usually there were signs, nibbled lettuce pieces, bits of hay strewn about. But that morning, the tunnel was a sealed hush. No slow blinks, no nudge of nose. Her shoulders folded in. She lifted the edge of the fleece. Empty, her stomach dropped into itself. Calm didn't come first, panic did. She checked behind the easel, under it, around the bin of felt squares, the crate of glitter glue, even beneath the foam alphabet puzzle pieces near the rug. Nothing. Children began noticing the shift in air. Olive asked where the cage went. It's still there, Ms. Reed said, trying not to sound as sharp as the inside of her heartbeat. But Crumpet may be playing hide-and-seek. Robin was already halfway beneath the reading bench. Is he underlight all the books? Maybe he escaped, whispered Jovi, her words edged in wonder, like in one of the library stories. Liam hadn't moved yet. He sat cross-legged, hands resting across his lap. His eyes were fixed not on the empty cage, but at the corner of the rug where the nap mats were tucked during the morning. Very slowly he stood. He walked past the painting easel, past the sticker chart, past Ms. Reed, who was calling quietly now, as if Crumpet were a name the walls should return. Liam knelt by the red quilt in the reading corner. That quilt had been folded neatly that morning after circle. Team a nest of comics and beanbags half buried beneath it. No one had touched it since. He laid his palm flat across the soft fold near the edge. Beneath, something warm. No movement, but warmth. Liam gently peeled it back fold by quiet fold. The classroom seemed to hold its breath. There, nestled among the soft threads and half-shadowed sun, was a small, calm body. Not shaking, not frightened, just still, eyes closed, toes curled beneath like tucked questions. A small fuzz of bedding clung to his side, as though he'd brought some memory with him. His sides rose gently, barely, not gone, not surrendered, but waiting, in a way that made your breath go funny. Like he wasn't hiding, just resting where things felt like silence and storybooks. Liam placed both hands softly, palms down, on the floor beside him. "He's under the red blanket," he said, his voice too quiet for certainty but too sure. For debate, Ms. Reed turned. Children gathered slowly, some crouching, some just sitting where they were, as if moving closer might wake him or scare him. No one spoke. He must have gotten out, Ms. Reed said, after a full minute in which the only sound was the tick-tick of the classroom clock. "But the cage was latched last night." "I know it was." She crouched beside Liam, one hand hovering just above Crumpet's shape. She didn't touch him. "I checked it," she murmured. "You didn't need to," Liam said. She looked at him. "He wasn't lost," Liam added. "We just didn't know where to look." No one laughed. No one said he was wrong. A moment stretched like fabric around them, warm and strange. Robin reached over and gently placed her daily sticker today, shaped like a peach next to Crumpet's. Poor, he didn't wake, but his body gave a faint twitch, not frantic, just aware, recognizing, and he blinked. Once, then again, he looked around like someone waking from a long nap and remembering the plot halfway through. Ms. Reed exhaled. "We worried about you," she whispered. Crumpet didn't respond. He simply lay still, as if to say, "Don't worry. I've been listening the whole time." Later, when the class returned to its hum of drawings and hallway walks, Ms. Reed fixed the latch on the cage again, added a baby carrot, refluffed the fleece, but the red quilt in the reading corner, it was never moved again without ceremony. They left it tidy, but always open at one corner, just in case. It began in November, the kind that came with slow wind and clouds that didn't bother to rain, just hovered. Room 12 was crafting paper turkeys and cutting glue-clumped feathers when Crumpet stopped eating. Not dramatically, just paused. Ms. Reed noticed it the second day. His hay sat untouched, water bottle barely dented. Normally, he would shuffle forward when papers rustled or when Liam sat nearby. But that Tuesday morning, he didn't stir. She crouched beside the cage, her knees creaking quietly. "Hey," she whispered, tapping gently on the edge of his fleece tunnel. "You doing okay, Crumpet?" He blinked once, didn't move, didn't flee, didn't hide, just rested, still, and something in his eyes made her chest tighten. A prickle that started behind her ribs and climbed up through her breath. That night, she stayed late. The wind outside whispered under the windowsills. Most of the staff had left, the hallways dim and echoing. Ms. Reed sat grading story starters when a note of faint sound caught her attention. Crumpet, a single sharp squeak. She turned immediately. He was at the corner of the cage, paws pressed awkwardly to the glass, his ears twitching against the silence. His eyes were fixed not on her, but directly above her she stood. But the air shifted too quickly. Her vision tilted. Sideways, she didn't hear her own name as it broke gently from her mouth. Didn't quite catch the edge of the table. Everything light. Time. Thought tilted backward from her like a coat shrugged off too fast. The next moment tasted like cotton and antiseptic. Someone calling her name. An oxygen monitor beeping. Later, they said it had been a transient episode. Nothing catastrophic. Vascular fatigue, they called it. After high stress, after late nights, after forgetting breakfast again. "You were lucky," the nurse had said, holding her wrist where the blood pressure cuff hissed. "Do you remember what happened?" She remembered the cage, the eyes, the squeak. I didn't fall far, she murmured. Doesn't take far, the nurse said, tight-lipped. It takes time. The custodian had been the one to find her. Said something had drawn him past room 12 again that night. He'd been halfway down the hall when he thought he heard a knock. No one there, he'd said, but your classroom door. It was open. Crumpet had been at the window end of the cage when he arrived, watching still, but somehow alert. When Ms. Reed returned to school the next week, wrapped in quiet apologies and patterned scarves, the class clapped as if she'd come back from a castle. Robin made a crown out of orange construction. Paper. Jovi glued cinnamon sticks to a card that said, "You are the warmest teacher." But Liam didn't make a card. He just sat quietly one morning near the fleece tunnel and placed a single green lettuce leaf beside the food bowl, like an offering or a thank you. Crumpet took it slowly, with ceremony. He told us, Liam said as Ms. Reed returned to her desk. His voice was whisper-light, like he borrowed it from the inside of a storybook. She paused, her hands half full. Of papers. Told you what, sweetie? That you needed help. Ms. Reed didn't argue. She walked slowly to the cage and crouched again. Their eyes met. Thank you, she whispered. Crumpet blinked, as though the message had made it through. After that, Ms. Reed adjusted her mornings. She started eating breakfast in the staff lounge, something she hadn't done in years. She stopped picking up glitter lids off the floor after the final bell, and she stood outside each day long enough to feel 3 breaths of natural air before heading home, and Crumpet's appetite returned. Bit by bit, by December, he was back to weaving his tunnel bedding into that lopsided spiral that made Robin giggle. Back to shifting when Liam sat near, ears flicking whenever the crayons clicked too loudly. But there was something else now, each morning. Before unzipping her coat, Ms. Reed checked his cage, not for movement, not just for food levels or bedding. Fluffed at, she looked him in the eyes, because from then on, the class knew. Crumpet's silence was not the absence of sound, it was the presence of listening so deep it sometimes heard what even grown-ups dared not say aloud. And when he squeaked just once, just sharp, it was never random. It meant hold still, look, breathe. Differently, something important is about to be known, and because of him, room 12 did. The parking lot had grown more crowded lately, not with cars, but with pauses. Parents lingered longer at pickup. Conversations that once floated in and out like birds at feeders began to root in place. At first, they only asked polite questions. New lights in your classroom. As the school started meditating with the kids, Ms. Reed usually smiled. Not that I know of. Then she'd glance past them, toward the window with the sun-stain and fleeced tunnel just barely visible beyond the glass. One mum leaned close during pickup, her voice hushed like a confession. My daughter told me Crumpet can see bad dreams before they come. Miss Reed raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She's been sleeping, though, the woman added. That's the thing. She's been sleeping all the way through since last week. No midnight tears, no waking up asking where I went. And then she looked away, blinking hard. Do you think he's helping somehow? Ms. Reed thought about the note Olive had written the day before. The one that said, Crumpet likes to keep sadness in his belly, so he don't have to carry it all the time. I think, she said carefully, he makes the room feel safe. Safer than it should be. I mean, it's not just my daughter. Another parent said the following day, Max drew a lion yesterday. Max has never drawn anything but pizza slices. Liam talks more at home now, said another on Thursday, while adjusting her baby's car seat straps. He even said thank you without being reminded. A father, the quiet kind who always wore headphones, gently laid down a small bag by Ms. Reed's desk on Friday morning. "What's this?" she asked. "Parsley and carrots," he said. Teacher store didn't have a gift certificate for a guinea pig. Inside the bag, a poem, typed, folded on pale blue paper. No name it read. He does not speak, yet makes us whole with tiny pause and careful soul. The world is sharp where we begin, but softens where his whiskers grin. Parents began asking to peek inside, not for long, just a moment. "Could I just do you? Mind if I show him to the little one? He's still here, right?" I heard about the blanket thing, and when they stood by the cage, they always seemed to breathe quieter. Once, a grandmother entered with her son's daughter. She hadn't been on a campus in years. She clutched a basket covered in a crocheted handkerchief. She lifted the corner, with reverent fingertips dot inside. 3 crisp arugula leaves, a half slice of orange, and a tiny embroidered napkin. "For him," she said. He gave Olive her words back. She used to line them up, but never throw them. Now she tells no jokes. Crumpet stared at her for a long moment, then turned away and burrowed 1 inch deeper into his tunnel. "That means he likes it," Olive whispered in her ear. Not all visitors brought something. One man stopped on his lunch break for a week straight. He never spoke, just watched. He smiled once, scratched behind his ear, and left an old coin at the corner of Crumpet's rug. When Ms. Reed tried to return it, he only said, "No." He looked me in the eye. That's all I needed. The PTA asked if they could host an appreciation day, not for the class. Just for him, they clarified. Ms. Reed thanked them, but kindly refused. He wouldn't want glitter or clapping, she explained, smoothing a hand along the top of his water bottle. He wants quiet and parsley, maybe a cotton ball too. Chew. But the word spread anyway. Crumpet became something of a myth, not the loud kind, but the kind that mothers whisper to one another during grocery store checkouts. The kind of story that fathers text to each other in oddly timed group chats. Right after sharing a meme. One evening, a past student returned. Mallory, now in middle school. Purple hoodie, scuffed sneakers. She stood awkwardly at room 12's door. "He's still alive?" she asked, voice cracking a little dot. Ms. Reed nodded. Mallory entered quietly. She sat where she used to sit for story time, pulling her knees to her chest. Crumpet was halfway through a sleepy nibble, but he paused, blinked slowly, and faced her. "I drew him once," she said. "I remember," Ms. Reed replied. "It's still on my closet wall. Can't take it down. Doesn't feel right." The clock ticked. The sun left a gold stripe on the floor. "Thank you," Mallory whispered. Toward the cage. Crumpet slowly resumed chewing. From the hallway, someone called her name. She stood, brushing invisible crumbs from her sleeves. "He doesn't know he helps us, does he?" Ms. Reed smiled. "Maybe he does. Maybe he always did." The girl hesitated, then reached into her hoodie pocket. She pressed a folded note between the cage bars. It read, "You made it so quiet inside. Me, thank you." She left without waiting for a reply. The letter remained beneath the bedding until the following week, when Crumpet shredded it not wildly, but carefully and lined the edge of his tunnel with it. When Ms. Reed saw it, she didn't remove the remains. She gently folded the rest into shape. A small napkin nest of purpose. Some names stay on honor rolls, Some hang on hallway stars, but Crumpet's legacy unfolded slowly between files, between sighs, between forgotten mittens found at just the right time, and what room 12 did not say. Its parents did, in small offerings, in stories retold at bedtime, in the paused hush that wrapped around them any time they glanced through the window and saw the tunnel still slightly rustle, because it meant he's still here. And somehow, even on the days when kindness felt like a tall thing to reach, so were they. It happened in the quiet of a Wednesday morning, when the class was still wrapped in yawns and zipper jams, and the overhead lights wore their sleepy hum like housecoats. The window condensation drew its usual swells, clouds touched by fingertips, coy suns, the occasional ghost message left by a mittened palm that faded before snack time. The day began as most did, circle time with cushions askew, a story read with laughter tucked in its punctuation, a spelling game that went slightly off topic because Bennett insisted frog started with a whisper. But by mid-morning, something changed. It was Olive who noticed it first. She blinked. Down from the window ledge where she'd perched with her coloring book and tilted her head toward the cage. "He's not at the door," she said simply. At first, no one looked. Crumpet was allowed to stay half-hidden, huddled in his fleece tunnels, quiet, watching, but still, always there if you looked with the soft part of your seeing. Ms. Reed paused mid-sentence, one hand on the chalk tray, her breath caught. She made her way to the cage. She tapped once, very gently, like she might knock on a memory. "Hey, Crumpet." No scuffle of bedding, no nose, no blink. Robin set her scissors down. Nicolette dropped her glitter glue. Liam didn't move, not at first, but his lips pressed together until the color left them. Ms. Reed crouched. Not fast, not sharp. She lifted one edge of the fleece. He was curled, not upside down, not distorted or wrong, just still, his body in a light spiral, like a comma. His nose tucked to his paw like a thought he didn't mind keeping to himself. One piece of hay still rested across his back like a forgotten ribbon. "No," whispered Jovi. Olive's hand clutched Liam's sleeve. Ms. Reed didn't confirm it. Not out loud. She lowered the fleece again like a page she wasn't ready to reread and sat beside the cage on the hardwood floor, her fingers pressed softly to her lips. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." No one asked what had happened. Somehow, they all knew. 20 little bodies shifted not into chaos, not into questions, but into a slow orbit around the cage, like planets unsure whether to spin or still themselves. It wasn't like the fire drills, where you stopped, lined up, and pretended to be statues. It wasn't like scraped knees. It wasn't even like the fish. It was different, softer and bigger, and harder and invisible. Robin picked up a piece of construction paper, cut a star, then another, and another. Nicolette got the tape without being told. Jovi began to hum under her breath, off-key and cracking, but tender. A hush settled in where Crumpet used to sit, but not heavy, not completely. Liam stood. He walked without comment to the corner of the classroom, opened the cubby with the art supplies, and pulled out the Crumpet songbook, a small, stapled booklet of 3 pages and several crayon drawings of a superhero guinea pig in a cape made of lettuce. He placed it near the cage. Ms. Reed wiped her eyes. "I'll read it," he said. His voice didn't shake. He sat cross-legged on the rug, held the booklet with both hands, and began. "Crumpet is soft like a storm that went quiet. Crumpet is warm like a hand that stays still. Crumpet is quick but not when you look fast. He lives in a tunnel, but he is even last, ... By the final page, several children were crying, some quietly, some like breathing had taken on hiccups. Ms. Red didn't stop them. She didn't fix it, she just held the space. She laid a small, hand-knitted washcloth over the cage like a curtain. "We'll do something special," she said. No one asked what don't they already knew. That afternoon, they made crowns, all of them. Paper crowns wrapped in foil and stickers and glue. Spots that never quite dried. Each one different, each one with a heart drawn somewhere small. They wrote thank you messages on index cards. Short ones, all true. Thank you for not running when I dropped things. Thank you for being my whisper friend. Thank you for Liam. Ms. Reed saved one for herself. On it, she wrote, "You taught us stillness. You taught us story shape. You taught us everything that doesn't need a voice." Then she taped it to the inside flap of his carrier, the one they hadn't used since the first day he'd come. After school, she carried him gently, wrapped in the red storytime quilt. Underneath the playground tree, the children gathered near. She'd brought an empty tea tint painted with stars by the art group last week. They hadn't known why at the time, now they did. She placed him inside softly, his folds of fleece tucked around him like an ending, then sealed it with the tiniest bow. Liam placed the first crown on top. Others followed, each child stepping forward. One by one, crowns too big, too colorful, some lopsided, but all offered with reverence. And when they stepped back, Ms. Red read her card aloud. Some hearts beat quietly, but make the loudest difference. She didn't cry until they all started singing the crumpet song, as best they could remember it. Broken verses, out of order, but full outside. Leaves lifted in the wind, curled and kissed by dusk. The crown pile shimmered like something sacred, and just beyond the tree, where light filtered like apology, someone swore a squirrel sat perfectly still as if staying quiet, just to pay respects. They buried him beneath the playground tree, the one shaped like a crooked umbrella that refused autumn faster than the others. Its roots made bumps in the pavement where scooters sometimes stumbled, and its branches stretched like arms, pretending not to hold anything. But that day, it held everything. The tea tin was placed gently in the shallow, scooped earth. It had been painted with love and some confusion, a galaxy of stars. Accidental fingerprints, a lone lightning bolt from Bennett's imagination. Olive had added a sticker beneath the lid, a silver one with sparkles that simply said, "Stay, Ms." Reed had dug the hole herself that morning, before the bell. Her knees in the dirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, breath fogging slightly in the air as the shovel moved without rhythm. She didn't cry then. She saved that for later. Each child had made a paper crown, construction paper creased and stapled together, sequins askew, some bearing the word king or hero, or in Liam's case, just a single star outlined in blue crayon. They wore them all morning, during weather time and snack and the reading of a book no one really heard. After lunch, Ms. Reed brought them outside in a line, 2 by 2, the way they walked for fire drills. No one chatted. No one kicked pebbles or laughed too loud. They came like processions come, weightless with what they're carrying and tender about where they step. At the tree, the class formed a misshapen circle. Ms. Reed stood in the middle, palms pressed together, back slightly bowed. In front of her, the ground, the tin already nestled in it, its lid closed, its silence respected. She didn't tell them what to do. She didn't need to. Jovi stepped forward first. Her crown had a pipe cleaner heart stuck to the top that nodded every time she blinked. "Going to whisper," she said, because that's what he liked. She bent low, knelt beside the tree, and whispered into the hole. No one heard the words. That was their job, to stay inside. Then came Robin. She carried her crown in both hands, having decided he should wear it now. She laid it on the edge of the dirt, careful not to bend its tips. Bennett followed, digging into his jacket pocket to retrieve a tiny plastic knight, its arm broken, its paint chipped. "This was mine," he said simply. He'd understand what makes someone brave. He placed it next to the tin and bit his lip hard. One by one, the others stepped forward. "Thank you for Liam." That was Olive. "Thank you for telling the storm to hush." That was Robin again, voice firm like a spell. "Thank you for being my friend," Nicolette whispered as she brushed a leaf off the top of the tin with the back of her hand. Ms. Reed didn't time them. She didn't call names. They knew when it was their turn. They knew when it was time to leave something behind and carry something forward instead. Liam was the last. He didn't speak. He hadn't all afternoon, not since the art table had found a crown where his jacket should have been. He walked to the tree barefooted, his shoes still in his cubby, forgotten, and knelt. In his hand, a folded piece of lined notebook paper. It wasn't crumpled or bent, just folded with care, the kind of care someone gives a secret. He opened it, just enough to read silently to himself. His lips moved, and then, without hesitating, he pressed the note flat against the lid of the tin, rested a tiny white pebble on top as if to keep the words from blowing away. Then he whispered, "I'll keep saying what you taught me." The wind stirred as if nudging the memory. Ms. Reed stepped forward. She took one final paper crown, the one she had made late the night before, hunched over her kitchen table, hands shaking more than she'd like to admit. It was plain, a quiet, off-white. Instead of decorations, it had a single sentence scrawled across the band in pencil. Some hearts beat louder after they stop. She placed it gently over the tin, then, kneeling beside her students, with hands small and worn and all belonging to someone who had known Crumpet, they began to cover him, not with speed, not with urgency, but with love. Handfuls of soil passed from one to the next. A scoop taken, a breath held, a scatter placed, each child participating, each one part of the closing, until the crown was buried, then the tin, then the night, then the sticker marked "Stay." Once the surface was smooth, Olive laid a circle of orange palms around the mound, because he liked these, she said, though no one had ever seen him play with one dot above them. The tree held steady. A breeze skimmed its leaves, and just then, a squirrel, not frantic, not skittish, descended from a lower branch and sat on the edge of the dirt. It didn't twitch, didn't look startled by 20 small witnesses. It sat still, as if in attendance. Ms. Reed cleared her throat, but not to start speaking, just to keep breathing. She nodded once. "Whenever we pass by," she said, "let's say thank you, with thoughts or sounds or quiet. Any way is good." They stood there another full minute, the moment pressing itself around them, not in sorrow, but in something like gratitude with roots. Then one by one they walked back, their crowns still on their heads, their shoes kicking specks of dust into memory. Inside the classroom, no one touched the cage, but someone did place a single piece of parsley near the tunnel. It stayed there all week, drying gently in the hush he used to live inside. The years kept moving, The way hallway clocks move not fast, but louder than you expect when you're finally listening. Room 12 changed, like most places do with time. New backpacks, new art on the walls, new laughter shaken loose into the tiles, but not everything changed. The fleece tunnel stayed, not at first on purpose. After Crumpet was gone, Ms. Reed had cleaned the cage, wrapped his favorite chew toy in tissue like a relic, donated the unused food, dismantled the water bottle, with the label Olive had drawn on Crumpet's juice in shaky marker. But the tunnel, she couldn't move it. She'd lifted it, set it aside, meant to pack it into the once used carrier. But it didn't feel empty, not exactly full either, just humming, like the kind of silence that doesn't want to be folded. So she laid it in the reading corner, next to the quilt, at first for comfort, then just because and somehow it stayed. Children didn't speak of it, they just used it. Some curled up beside it when the world was too loud, others whispered into it as they might whisper to a flashlight, beneath a blanket sharing stories not meant for grown-ups or sunlight. Once, a new student named Theo found it his second week. He didn't ask what it was. He simply crawled inside during rest time, dragging a stuffed bear behind him. When he emerged 15 minutes later, hair static charged, socks inside out, he blinked at Ms. Reed and said, "It smells like kindness in there." She said nothing, only nodded. Slowly. Another day, two students began fighting over the last blue paint pod, voices climbing like pan lids, fingers pointing. But before Ms. Reed could intercede, one of them paused, looked toward the fleece. "Let's ask the tunnel," she whispered. They took turns pressing their faces to its folds, listening, then silence, then giggles. Then, without prompting, they chose green together. Ms. Reed didn't interrupt. It became part of the room. On hard days, she watched the tunnel, not for movement, for mood. Once, after a fire drill that left one child in tears and another in a spiral of chewing crayons, there was a line to sit with the tunnel. An unofficial queue formed. By the bookshelf, no one fussed. Everyone waited their turn. Ms. Reed added a pillow next to it. Then, a tiny clipboard with blank paper. Thoughts you don't want to say out loud became the heading. Children didn't need instructions, neither did the tunnel. Some days, it sat untouched, like a pond in dry season. Other times, without announcement or note, it gathered small offerings of paper. Snowflakes slipped between its folds, a carrot drawn in pink crayon taped above it, a rubber band bracelet knotted loosely around its edge. Even when new teachers stopped by subs visitors, aides, they paused there. One aide touched the tunnel lightly with her ring finger and murmured, "It smells like someone used to sit here and believe in tiny things." Rainy days made it hum louder, not with sound but with warmth, a ripple of memory that never said its name but was always recognized. Sometimes, when Ms. Reed came in early, before footsteps and bells reset the world, she'd find the tunnel ever so slightly wrinkled, folded in one corner, fluffed differently, like something had rested inside it overnight. No crumbs, no fur, but presents. Students who never met Crumpet still tiptoed near it, still drew guinea pigs in pencil margins, still wrote names like Mr. Whisperpaws and Crumbly on birthday. Cards for creatures no one could explain. An unspoken tradition formed. First spelling test of the year. Touch the tunnel for luck. Lost tooth. Whisper a wish into its side first. New sibling at home. Let the tunnel know you're Not less now, you're just farther from the middle. Once, the janitor paused while changing a light bulb. How long's that had been there? He asked, pointing. Miss Reed looked up from laminated weather cards. 12 years, maybe more. He nodded slowly. Thought so. Room feels ... kinder than it needs to. She smiled. That's always been true. By the window, the sun caught it just right. That morning lighting soft fuzz, still clinging to the edges, like memory threads. Someone had written a sticky note and pressed it to one side. It wasn't signed. It just read, "You don't have to be big to be big." No one moved it. No one wrote over it. The tunnel sat quiet, accepting ... and just once on a full moon Friday. Ms. Reed could have sworn it shifted. Not much, just the slightest lean, as if remembering someone or waiting to be remembered. 10 years is a long time in kindergarten years. The reading rug was new, brighter, with alphabet whales border-stitched into its edges, but still a gathering place for stories no one outgrew. The nameplate on the teacher's door now read Miss Keller, soft black letters against pale wood. But if you looked carefully, taped on the back corner of her desk drawer was a photo, no frame, just curling corners and a soft image, a guinea pig with fur the color of pale parchment, nestled in a tunnel of fleece, eyes half closed, mid-chew. Her students never really asked who he was, but sometimes, when the lights flickered during morning writing, or when the wind yelped outside during snack time, or when a crayon broke in half at just the wrong moment, a child would glance up from their world of glue sticks and pencil clatter and whisper, without knowing they were whispering, "Your guinea pig is magic." And Miss Keller would smile. Not wide, not like when someone finally tied their own shoe, but with a softness that landed somewhere deeper. He always knew when someone needed something, she'd say. She said it the same way every time. A password or a lullaby tucked between math time and lunch. Magic was not the subject, but adaptation was. Listening. The tight, invisible seams of understanding under loud, colorful classrooms. Miss Keller kept the fleece tunnel, though she never said it aloud. She had it cleaned, stitched in 3 places where time had worried the edges. It lived now in her own reading corner, beneath a small lamp and a picture book shelf shaped like a cloud. Children found it on their own. They always did. Arlo, who bit his nails until lunchtime, sat beside it one morning and stopped mid. Instead, he traced the folds with a marker lid and stayed silent for 2 whole songs. Emery, who hadn't adjusted since moving, tucked her unicorn plush inside and whispered, "He'll guard her while I go to music." And Devon, who preferred quiet corners and drew nothing but clocks, placed one of his hand-drawn timepieces beside it and declared softly, "So he knows what time we miss him." The tunnel wasn't told what it was, it told them. Miss Keller never used the word crumpet in lessons. Yet by November, someone always said it. Drawings appeared. Guinea pigs with capes made of leaves, with quiet behind their eyes and spiral stars above their heads. Words like crumb, comfort, and once, profound in its own invention. Mr. is here, and always, a soft feeling when the tunnel caught the light dot in the staff lounge. Miss Keller was kind but quiet. Others gushed about new methods, new apps, new parent challenges. She sometimes smiled, stirred her coffee with both hands. Once, during a thunderstorm that rattled the music room windows and frightened 2 first graders into hiccups, a substitute teacher popped into her room, drenched and wide-eyed. "How's your class not freaking out?" she asked, looking at 20 tiny bodies calmly coloring rainbows beneath the window streaks. Miss Keller glanced toward the reading corner. A small girl named Priya had tucked herself into the tunnel. Two classmates squeezed beside her, one whispering, "It's okay, we're near the hush place." Miss Keller looked back at the substitute. "Something soft lives here," she said. "The kids can feel it." The substitute paused. "You mean like a pet?" "No," said Miss Keller. Then, after a beat, "Not anymore." When anyone asked why his students were so careful with one another, why they waited turns without timers, why the shyest among them opened like envelopes, tucked with gentleness, Miss Keller shrugged. "It's the room," she'd say. The rooms had practice. In a quiet drawer, she kept 3 index cards written in uneven child handwriting. 1. Thank you for being calm like space. 1. You made Liam talk, and I bet that was hard. And 1, scrawled in faint purple. I'm not scared of being quiet anymore. Someday, the fleece will fray too far to keep. Someday, the faces will change again. But stories don't end. Just because someone stops drawing them, they keep humming. They take new names. They curl beside. Tunnels no longer warm with pause and still. Feel breath inside them. And sometimes, when light catches afternoon dust and scatters it just right across the tiles, new students pause and tilt their heads and say, "I thought I saw him." Miss Keller never looks. She doesn't have to. Some whispers are meant only for those who remember how to listen.